Welcome to another quick video. I thought I would review some of my older works again because a couple of people said they kind of enjoyed that. Obviously I can't keep doing it because I don't have that many old pieces, so I had to go back in time and kind of look for even more poor work and kind of talk about it. This is one of the previous things I also took off very quickly. So one of the issues here now, if I look at it now, is the color palette, but also that everything is black and you can't actually see the background because there is stuff going on in the back here. So you can see there are actually walls here, and you kind of lose all the shape and the form that's in the back. So I would probably have tried and even out, so you can see the exposure here. Even it out a little bit so you can get to see the things a bit clearly, but then it makes it pretty bright again, so you might want to make it darker, right? Keep in mind I have no idea how to use Lightroom. Maybe dim it down in highlight. Look at the shadows. Just ignore my steam. Kind of push the whites a bit, see if you can brighten up the blacks. So you can see I'm dimming down the exposure to kind of not have it blown out a lot, and then I'm letting the highlights and the shadows and the blacks do part of work to get some of the shape back in, and I might then instead kind of push the highlight a bit, and let's see what else I can do. Is it a way to, what's this? Okay, so we should, so maybe I can see if I can get more red, a bit of a red tone on the mid-tone, or maybe I can have a bit of red tone on the highlights, a bit of purplish, bluish on the mid-tone, and maybe light blue on in the shadows. Kind of push that a bit. It doesn't help when I don't know about the tool that I'm using to kind of illustrate stuff. But this isn't this reference here. It's not, yeah. So you can see, I mean, it's obviously there's a limit on how much I can edit. You can see you get more of the shape, the form, the color, the reflection. You can see the background a little bit. The reason we're talking about it in this way, keep in mind, it's because we're talking about it from the point of view that it's a playable level, and the composition is kind of bad as well, I think. So, but you can see there's a difference of look and quality nonetheless. This one is super flat, I guess, in a way, and you can see it's super bright. So on this one we would probably push the exposure a little bit down and push the highlights, push the shadows slightly down, so we're doing the opposite basically. And the blacks, see how far we can push it. Not too much. Maybe here, the whites, push it a little bit like so. And again, we can look at the surrounding area, and we can think about that there's a lot of sky, so maybe make it a bit more blue. The shadows, let's make that also a little bit of blue greenish. And let's do the highlights. Let's make that a bit of orangish, maybe something along here, maybe even push it a bit. So yeah, so I mean I would probably do something like this this time around. I would have a bit harsher shadow, bit contrast, different color on the environment, and push it a little bit to kind of make the focal point here more clearer. So obviously that also means that is maybe, is it do I yeah, probably should learn this a bit more to be effective. That's why I prefer Photoshop, because at least I can paint it over very quickly for you guys. But yeah, I mean, it's a good example anyway. You can see that it's not overly bright, the shadows are a bit stronger, the sky is more readable as well, the shapes are more readable. It's a bit black, and that's not a big problem per se. You could fine tune it if you wanted to, make it sharper if you wanted to. Here's the same area as the other one, but just a different idea. Here as well, maybe you would consider making the darks. I see I've done something. Let me just unselect this. Okay, so if I were to select this area like so, okay, and invert it, and then is it possible to, no, that was wrong, so this was inverted, right? So outside of this area I'm highlighting up the shadows a bit, and the whites I'm dimming down maybe a little bit, the blacks I'm still letting the blacks be a bit. Then I'll undo this, and then I might be putting a greater area here, and I think it needs to be inverted to select inside of it, and I might be pushing the white, the shadows, the blacks a little bit. Then I will do this, and then I might be, for example, be going bit more bluish. The shadows I might go actually a bit more reddish, and the highlights I might be going a bit, just a bit more yellow, right? So you have these different ways of altering pieces to get a different tone of color and visibility. Again, this is the point from the displayable level, and also the time of the day, right? The light's coming from an angle, so technically it would be more sunsetty, so you probably would have more orange in the scene for that matter. So you could also even pull it out a little bit to make it pop a bit more. That's another scene from outside. It's similar to the other one, in that you want to make sure that you are pushing things a bit and not making it too flat. So you can see that it looks kind of interesting when it is on its full, but we also could possibly follow the tradition of don't like that at all. Let's see, what does this do? I'm learning as I'm going. So if I pull up the shadows, that's interesting, I think, and give the shadows a bit of a red. Let's try that, and then let's look at the highlight and pull that up, pull that a bit down. Shadows, let's pull that a bit down. Still don't like that either. That's the problem with bad pieces, they're also pretty hard to tone. I guess a bit bluer look suits this, but sometimes I like to be a bit creative and put a hint of purple inside, and then I would look at the shadows and the whites, the blacks. It's not a lot of black information. Is this how I get more black? It's kind of hard to edit this one actually, to be fair. Don't like the composition, don't like the angle of the camera. I do like the leading lines, but not necessarily in this particular context. It doesn't really work well, unfortunately. These are more like creative pieces. In this, I was trying to use emissive lighting only and mixing the color using emissive lighting by creating a third color using color mixing techniques. So let's see what happens. This is the midtone on that side. This is the shadow. Let's keep the shadow there. Keep the midtone up a bit. And then pull up the highlight. And let's increase the exposure. Doesn't really help when I don't actually know the tool well, does it? That's okay. To pull down the shadow a bit, pull up the white a bit to kind of emphasize this side a bit. This is another piece, kind of like coming out from a life, and there's like green light going on. I would probably push the green even more. Just for creative reasons, to be honest. But then put a little bit blue, so you get a bit of a different kind of green to it. Maybe even increase the exposure a little bit. And then look at the shadows. Give them a bit more bounce. Pull the white out. Pull the black a little bit down. Still be able to see the shape of everything is kind of important. Then you can always look at your piece afterwards and kind of add a different color and tone to it. It's always good to have a bit of a general idea of what you want as well, to kind of make things pop a bit. So you can see that I'm trying to get more shape out from the scene in general, to kind of make it more highlight. I think I gave up on this one because you can see the fog doesn't look right. It kind of doesn't have the right placement. The angle is poor. The leading lines are poor. The lighting is also very poor. It's generally very poor. So, I mean, are there ways to fix it? Probably. I'm sure there is. Always something you can do to fix something, but in this case we're talking about, you can see that it's kind of hard to fix this. It's generally a bad piece, sorry. This is another piece. It's interesting. Definitely an interesting histogram going on over here. Here you might have tried to do some edits on this one. Sorry. And kind of push the sky a bit, because it's kind of there's a flatness to it, right? Right, something like this, to kind of push out the piece a little bit, even though you have some attempts here where I'm trying to frame it, but I'm doing a little bit poor job. And since this is a snow, probably add a bit more blue color to it, because that's helps a bit. Sometimes it's good to darken the shadows a bit to give it a bit more mood. We don't want to clip the white light too much, and give it a bit of vibrance because it's kind of sci-fi, so we can kind of push the colors a bit. Again, it's often about your preference, obviously. So with the shadows, we want them to be pretty blue. Maybe even a bit of like a creative magenta. Saturation is actually too much, so let's tone it back down. The ribes back down. The mid-tone, we can go for a bit of a warm color as well, and let's go for a bit of a yellow here. So yeah, I mean, you can see the difference. It's mostly about the exposure of the light here. That's the thing, and making it this the focal point. Here you're actually maybe looking under the rock a bit more because it's actually pretty flat, but here it's so bright that you kind of look here first. Here the composition is pretty bad in general, I would say, but here you could maybe do something similar but still a bit different. You could try and make this piece a bit brighter sky maybe, and give it like a bit of a cool blue tone to it. I think that would probably help, right? And then I might try, for example, to do the opposite. Over here, and I might go a bit warmer. Maybe that's where the sun is, right? And my fingers are hurting. A bit darker, perhaps, to push the background a bit down. That's basically what we're doing. Then we'll draw shadows back down. So you see there's some darker areas. The mid-tone we'll do a bit up, and the highlands we could push them. You can see again just general principle. Of course I'm being very quick with what I'm doing, but you can see there's a huge pop and difference to this type of style. Same is going here. We could probably do something really crazy here as well. We could push it and just keep pushing it. Right. Then we could look at it, kind of push it more. Then put the shadows. So there's a gradient going on here, so you kind of have the bright spot in the middle, and then it kind of fades off a different color. So the highlights we can have a bit red. The mid-tone we're gonna go for a bit of a green, and then the shadows we're gonna go for a bit of light blue, right? So you get this different look to it. Of course you can do other stuff if you were to actually treat your screenshot afterwards, which I don't do a lot, but it definitely helps. But here it's more about color and talking about how I could try and elevate the pieces to a different level. Here it's pretty dark. I mean, you can see everything, so it's not super dark, so it's not necessarily bad, but you can see I have hardly any information going on here. So here it would probably be interesting to consider pushing. I mean, I'm pushing it a lot, and not a lot is happening here. Maybe push the middle a bit, brighten up the blacks a bit, right? Maybe it's too red, so you would take the shadows and give the shadows maybe a bit of a green bluish color. And maybe the mid-tone, they could be a bit reddish, and then the highlight could be, I would actually keep that as white, make that pop a bit. So just making it clear everywhere, but you still have a focal point. Is it perfect? Not necessarily. You can see that we are losing a lot of information in general in this piece. This helps with the framing, and these are leading lines, but you still need to have that push in your piece to really make it stand out a bit. So that's definitely something to keep in mind when you do these things. And again, it's the same thing here. This is outside, so you can see again, just by doing something like this, you can see the information wasn't properly used here. Right, and obviously you could, as I've said before, you can click here and do this in properly in Unreal. Obviously, you could like make sure that you have what you need. It's obviously different when you're doing it like this. So this was a terrible edit, but yeah, it's just to give you an idea. So yeah, I try to make this video very quick before I go do other things I have to do, but hopefully it's useful. I think it would be more useful and interesting if you have something that I could review, so please let me know, and you can send me something that you want me to look at. I think that would be very cool. Thanks for watching.